Hey YouTube, finally had some free time. Work's been taking up a lot of my time, and I thought I'd do something that I've been meaning to do for quite a while now, and that's do a final thoughts review video on the ECX Barrage. I had a viewer send me a message, and he kind of requested the same thing, so it just kind of pushed me along to get this thing done and get some info out for you guys on this rig. Let me start by saying my view on this rig, if you've watched my other videos, my view on this rig has not changed. I like it just as much, if not more, than when I did my original review. Top to bottom, I've had no issues with it. Absolutely none. No quality issues whatsoever. As far as running the rig, it keeps right up with my SCX-10. I've got two of them actually. Anywhere they've gone, I've been able to go with this rig. I would buy it again in a heartbeat. At $180, there is nothing on the market right now that's even halfway comparable to what this rig can do. So if you're watching this video for the very first time and you don't know if you want to get into this hobby, get into the crawling, scaling scene, this is probably one of your best bets, if not your best bet, to just get something at a low price point, get out there and see if it's something you like or not. So let me start with the body and kind of what I've done to it. I'll get into the chassis after that, and then I'll get into kind of my take on the rig over 6 months, and then some other issues that people have kind of voiced to me or sent me emails about. So let me pop the body off. The body is probably one of the biggest negatives to a lot of people out there, and to be honest with you, I think in theory it was a good idea, but in execution it just didn't turn out that way. And I've got to remind you though, you're looking at a rig that's $180. So with all that you get in the chassis, its capability, its electronics, and so on and so forth, you got to cut corners somewhere. So the body, they didn't put a whole lot of detail into the body, and they didn't, probably do some things that they, in my opinion, should have done at the factory. And I'll get into that right now. So if you look at the body on the box here, there are some rock sliders or running rails down below, and those go right into the fender. And it's in my opinion, one of the reasons they did it is just it's a cost-cutting measure. It's easy to just throw this into the mold, the Lexan, let it harden up, and then you don't have to take the time to cut this out. But in my opinion, it's not scale. And so what I did is I cut all those skirts out down below, and I actually made the fenders into fenders, and then I separated the tan from the fenders by painting the fenders black. And this is Tamiya flat black paint. The other thing I did is I have some RC4WD drive diamond plates, real cheap. It's about $12 for an 8x12 sheet, I think. But anyway, you just use 10 snips, you cut it up. I painted this black, and then I bolted it on real quick to the body. That was another thing I did. There's a lot of tan on this rig. Like I said, they didn't do a whole lot in terms of detail. So those small little things, in my opinion, make a huge difference. One of my other gripes that I had with this rig was the grill on the front. That's another thing that just didn't look scaled to me. I've never seen a grill quite like that. So this is a sticker from a Traxxas rig that I had laying around. I cut it up quite a bit to get it to fit, but I think in the end, I think it turned out pretty good. And again, it's another scale touch that you can add to the rig that wasn't already on there. These are hood scoops from an Axial Wraith build, I think it was. So I threw those on the front. Windshield wipers from, I think, the same build, or maybe an SCX-10 build. Door handle on the side, gas filler cap. I painted the bed in the back black, again, to kind of get rid of a lot of that tan. And just give it a more scale look. On the rear, on the tailgate, I put more of the RC four-wheel drive diamond plate. Again, just cut it out and attach it to the back. I put these antennas on the back. You can see them here. There's two of them, one on each side. And these are, I never even knew these existed, to be honest with you, but I knew what I wanted, and I started doing some investigating, some looking around, and these are actually antennas that Tamiya makes, and they make them for their Tamiya Scandia tractor, for their tractor trailer setups. And it's kind of like a little whip antenna. So anyway, it was pretty cool. So I bought a couple of those and put those on. You know, the biggest thing I've had people ask me about are the mirrors on the side. And it's funny because it's such a little item, but it adds so much to the scale realism of the body. These mirrors are from RC four-wheel drive, and they are style A. They're fairly cheap. They're made out of rubber, and they give, you know, and they rotate. They're real easy to install. I'll show you here. Really, all you do is you take a reamer and ream a hole out through the Lexan, and then the post comes through for the mirror, and then it just uses a body clip to attach the mirror to the body. I put a couple washers on there. I think you can see that. And I just put those washers on there to give it a little bit more strength, so that it doesn't rip through the Lexan, and it holds on a little bit better. And while I'm on the bottom, you can see I painted the bottom black. Well, I painted everything black on the bottom. And the reason I do that is, again, this goes back to scale realism for me. When you get the rig out on the trail, especially on a sunny day, you tend to see the sun through the Lexan, and I just, to me, it just doesn't look scale. So with all my rigs, I paint the bottom black so that it prevents the sun from shining through. Plus, most cars have an undercoating on them in the real world, most 1.1 cars, and it's black. So to me, it just adds a little bit more scale realism. One of the other things I did is on this window, everything was big on this, big body, big everything, and that includes the window. The window was big, and I didn't really like that. So what I did is I broke it up by putting this, it's really just electrical tape, and I created a wing window, and what used to be is just big huge window there. And again, that's just another scale detail that just, in my opinion, adds to the rig. And I took a fine tip Sharpie and I outlined the door frame and then the third door in the back for the rear compartment in the truck. And again, I just did it to add a little depth to the rig, kind of give it a little bit more detail. If you're going to do this, definitely don't use anything bigger than a fine tip Sharpie. In my opinion, anything bigger than that, it just looks cheap. It's too thick. And I used a ruler. If you don't use a ruler and you get the lines kind of messed up, again, it just looks kind of cheap, doesn't look that great. So if you're going to do it, just take your time with it, use a ruler, and like I said, make sure you use a fine tip Sharpie. Sharpie and electrical tape go a long way in the RC hobby. Outside of that, there's really not anything else I did to the body, but in my opinion, with all of that done to the body, it really gave it a more scale look. Probably how the rig should have been done in the first place. The body should have came out in the first place, but again, it's you got to cut costs somewhere, and at $180, this is where they cut costs, so you can't really blame them. I'd rather have the performance in the vehicle, and I do the customizing to the body myself, so I'm happy with that. As far as the chassis goes, I haven't really done a whole lot with the chassis. If you've watched my prior videos, I put in these Nerf bars on the side. These are from an SCX 10 build. Real easy to do. You just drill through the rails. Those go on. A lot of this is going to be a repeat for some of you that have seen my other videos. On the front, I put in a winch. It's a worn winch, and that's made by RC four-wheel drive. I had that laying around again for another build. And then I put on these shackles on the front. And that's really about it. I hadn't really done anything else. I took a Sharpie and colored the motor. This was originally white, so it just kind of blends in a little bit. But that's about it. And the rest of the rig is bone stock. I haven't done anything to it. If you're looking at this receiver, there's nothing wrong with the receiver that came on the rig. Actually took about 2 or 3 rigs out to go run them, and I forgot the transmitter for the Barrage. So what I did is I just took a receiver out of one of my other rigs, and I just bypassed this receiver altogether. So again, nothing wrong with the receiver, but that explains why you see 2 in the rig. If you watched my original review of this rig, I talked about the bump stops, and I told you that my reasons why I thought they did it. And I own the ECX temper, and on the temper there's a lot of torque steer, torque twist going on all over that thing. And I did some things to get rid of it, and I thought that ECX put these bump stops in here. Let me see if I can get you a good shot of the bump stops. See if I can get the camera down in there. So what I'm talking about are these little plastic, they're right on the shaft right there. I hope you can see those. It's a little piece of rubber, and it goes right on the shaft of the shock. And I didn't know why, like I said, they did it, but I had some thoughts. And so what I did is I removed those bump stops off the shocks, and I was right. They put them on there to eliminate a lot of the torque steer and the torque twist, because when I took them off, I had not as much torque twist as I did with the temper, but it was definitely there. And for those of you that don't know what torque twist is, when you get on the motor, you pull the trigger, the whole chassis will twist, and sometimes it'll throw up a tire in the front because of it. This rig isn't as bad, like I said, as the temper, but I think that's primarily due to the fact that it's a little bit heavier, and just the way it's set up with the ladder frame, it's got a little bit more girth to it. But there's definitely some there. And the other thing I didn't like because of that is, again, I try and run my rigs like you would a 1-1 rig. I like to see that look when I'm driving them. And because the suspension was so loose, you ended up, when you were driving just straight, the body was listing or leaning to one side, and I just did not care for that at all. So I put the bump stops back on. Now, there may be a lot of you out there that like the massive articulation, and the listing of the body and the torque twist really doesn't concern you too much, and you know, there's probably some things you can do to really eliminate it and still have the massive articulation. Me personally, I'm not, on scalers, I'm not a huge fan of massive articulation, because again, I like to run my rigs like a 1-1 rig. And if you look at this rig, it has quite a bit of articulation as it is. And so I'm happy with it, to be honest with you. I mean, I really don't, for me personally, I don't need more. But if you do, remove the bump stops from the shocks, and you'll have a ton of articulation. This thing will be like a tank. It'll go over just about anything. But you're going to lose a lot of the scale realism of the rig. And if you want me to go through that a little bit more, I can, or I can leave some comments in the description, and I'd be happy to talk with you a little bit more about it. So that's the bump stops. One of the issues that a lot of people were having, and they emailed me about it, and they sent me messages or left me messages on YouTube, is the steering servo. And if you look at my original video, it is a short servo, and I don't know if I can get you a really, it's not a standard size servo. It's not as deep. And I don't know if it's a manufacturing issue or if it's just because it's not a standard size servo, but a lot of the servos were failing. The gears were stripping out. I haven't had a problem, but I'd say probably about half the people that watch my video have. So it's a 50-50 shot, flip a coin. Hopefully you get lucky. The good news is, from what I've heard from 100% of the people that I've asked, is Horizon Hobby will replace the servo for you free of charge. So while that is not a cool deal that the servo goes out, it's very cool that Horizon Hobby backs up their product. And from what I understand, it's been no questions asked, and it's been fairly quick ship. So if it does go out on you, know that Horizon Hobby ECX they're gonna back their product, and they're gonna send something new out to you. One of the reasons I don't think that I've had any issues, I don't drive my rigs really hard, and I try again drive them at scale speeds. So I imagine if you hit a curb with this, driving it at full speed, it's a pretty quick rig, and you'll probably strip the servo out right away. The other issue that I've heard is this rig benefits from CVDs, and CVDs give you a little bit better steering. I don't know if I can get a good shot of that. Light's not great, but the CVDs are right in here, and instead of having dog bones, they've got the CVD setup, and what it does is it gives you better steering. Well, in there's a set screw that holds the whole thing together, and a lot of people were having that set screw back out as they drove it, and then they were losing all drive to the front wheels. So really what I'm taking from that is from the factory there was no thread lock put in there, and so those set screws are backing out, and like I said, you're losing all traction in the front. So I went in there already and I pulled out the set screw, and again, it's hard to see, but I pulled it out and I thread locked it and I put it back in, and there's a little pin in there that you could potentially lose if you don't do that. And if you're out in the field and you lose it, you're probably never going to find it. So my advice to you is right out of the gate, pull those set screws out, take a look at your directions, and put some thread lock on them, thread lock them, and you shouldn't have any issues at all. And again, I haven't had any issues, period. But that's pretty much it for the chassis. I mean, there's not much else to it. It's set up, like I said, like an SCX 10, and it goes just about anywhere an SCX 10 will go. For the money, again, for the money, there is not, in my opinion, a better rig on the market. In fact, I think this rig has gotten so popular that I think you're going to probably see more rigs in this size and in this setup, because it is so popular. And $180, there's just nothing that can touch it. And again, it's a little bit smaller than an SCX 10. It's about the same size as a Tamiya CC01. So they call it a 1/12 scale, but again, in terms of size, it's right there with the CC01, which Tamiya claims to be a 1/10 scale rig. So to wrap this up, I've got nothing bad to say. I really don't. The only concerns, like I said, that you should have if you're looking to get this rig is the CVDs in the front and the servo. That's it. And a lot of guys are putting on different bodies for this as well. I've had a lot of questions about that. I probably should have mentioned that. The Tamiya CC01 bodies are probably the best fit for this chassis in terms of fitting the axle width and the length, wheelbase. So look into that if you're looking to get a different body. I know Proline makes some bodies out there that are a pretty good fit as well, and I think somebody else told me that they tried a Viterra body. So anyway, that's it. There's really not much else to say. So thumbs up on this rig all the way around. I highly recommend it. It's going to be in my garage for quite some time. It's probably one of my favorite runners. ECX has done a fantastic job. I'm sure they're going to come out with other models or bodies. This thing's just been, like I said, such a big hit. So hope you enjoy this. If you have any other questions, comments, or if you want me to touch on anything else, put it in the description box below. I'll take a look at it, and I'll do my best to answer you. But thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you later.